you think, Sonya, or should you wait? We wait another minute.
Let's wait. Let's wait
Okay.
one more minute,
Sure.
Leanna, as I know how that is coming back from lunch.
Yeah. Me
And then
too.
yes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And I'll share this with Michelle because I know she's on the line. I sent you an email early today to Michelle, so you can just let me know what dates work for you.
Getting some people joining us.
Yes, there we go.
Well, I hope everybody had a good lunch.
Yes, I had leftovers today. And it was good too, Leanna.
Sometimes leftovers are pretty tasty.
Yeah. As my dad would say, it was good again.
Absolutely. I keep waiting for him to do one of the is it Iron? No, it's not the Iron Chef competition. It's the one where they have the basket and they don't know what's in it. With do you know what cooking show I'm talking about? Where they give them the challenge to have the basket and they have like all these random ingredients. They have to cook something. Or I keep waiting for him to do something with like little packs of sauce. You know what I mean? Like taco sauce and ketchup, and not like a whole bunch of it, but just like little pieces here and there. That's how we have to cook in my house, you know.
Same here. I resemble that remark.
Sometimes you have to use those creative thinking and problem solving skills with what you have to
talk about. Real life usage, right?
Absolutely.
No, I think we can go ahead and get started, Leanna.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll get some more people joining us. But in the next little bit, we are going to talk all about just some professional learning opportunities that you can have access to that's at no cost and it's online that can really help you sharpen your skills in bringing not just computer science to life in your classroom, but just STEAM learning in general. So first question, and you can add in the chat, or because there's a little group of us, you can obviously come off mute if you want. But, you know, when I was a classroom teacher, and I remember when I got started even diving into teaching computer science, one of the things I always wanted to be able to do was peek inside another teacher's classroom to see what was going on. So I'm just kind of curious, what kinds of things do you think a teacher can learn by watching and listening to other teachers teach? What are some things that we can pick up on? Like I said, you can add in the chat or come off mute. Or I might just ask Kelly and Sonya.
Yeah.
Well, Leanna, when I was teaching, I will tell you this: I rarely got the opportunity to go in and look at anybody else's classroom, and certainly one of the things I wanted to see was like how another teacher handled materials and how, you know, what their procedures were, or how they were teaching, in some cases, how they were teaching a certain lesson, the strategies they were using in order to really get that deep learning of a certain concept that we both had to teach. Like when I was teaching algebra, let's say, I would have loved to have been able to go and watch someone teach a lesson on, I don't know, but on one of the concepts that they really needed and were struggling with. I would have loved to have been able to do that, but I never got to.
Yeah, I see our friend Tisha over in the chat has some great ideas too. Like, just like you said, Kelly, like strategies for managing materials, because I know like that was something I was always looking for myself. Just, you know, different ways to handle that. ways to introduce vocabulary and setting up those unplugged activities in a classroom for kids. Great ideas there, Tisha. One of the things I always look for too was my students often struggled with just questioning techniques, right? Like I always wanted them to ask good questions and be thoughtful about those questions and how they were phrasing them. And even some things like feedback. I know like when we worked on projects, especially projects involving, computer science related things, a lot of times it was robotics with me, helping them understand, how to give and receive feedback to each other that was meaningful. And so I was always looking for ways to do that. The problem was, Kelly, and I don't know if anybody else at this time, I didn't always have access to another teacher's classroom.
No.
Yeah, no, I didn't have a chance to get in there. So one of the things I'm really excited to talk about, well, I want to talk a minute about other things to benefit really quick here. So just to let you know what some research says that we can learn as teachers, or benefits actually to observing other teachers in the classroom. One, we can see how they interact with students and kind of pick up on ways that they handle even things like behavior issues, like I mentioned, questioning, that wait time, and kind of get some tips and tricks around that. Standards, how I teach certain standards, being able to see how somebody else teaches that information is also really helpful. We already mentioned materials and lessons, like how they, like their flow, maybe how much time they spend on one section of a lesson versus another, how they incorporate formative assessment techniques. Sometimes you just need that inspiration, right? Like maybe you're struggling with a way to really bring some kind of content alive for your students, and you just need that inspiration from somebody else and get that new perspective that maybe that you hadn't had the chance to think through before. So there is lots of benefits that we know of. That's great. So one of the things I'm super excited to share with people today is that we have this new professional development framework that's actually grounded in some teaching competencies. So in the development of this framework, we actually started with student learning outcomes and thought about what are all those teaching moves and competencies that we need to have as educators to really help drive instruction in our classrooms to help our students meet these learning outcomes. And so we have this framework. And as part of this framework for professional development, one of the assets we have is this great new online free professional development platform. So it's accessible to anybody. You just have to create an account. And we're going to walk you through that here in a minute on how to access these great resources. It's really helpful, obviously, if you have Lego solutions, but you know what? If you don't own any, like you can still find some great strategies that you can implement in your classroom just by listening and watching to other teachers teach. You'll notice here on our framework, we have a nice little circles divided into 4 sections. And these are our categories. So our competencies that we've identified have been clustered into these different category groups. So we have 21st century learning, STEAM concepts, and within STEAM concepts, you'll also find things for computer science, classroom management, and pedagogy. And you'll see these 4 colors and those categories again when we get in on the platform. So, but to get us started, we're going to think a minute about learning something new. So I want you to take a minute to think back to the last time that you learned something new and it was really hard and you really struggled. And what did you do to get over that hump? Give you a think time there for a minute. And if you want to share in the chat something that maybe you really struggled with the last time you had to learn something new, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm happy to tell you my last time I learned something new, it was learning how to knit. And I thought it was going to be the end of the world for me, but it was not. But I struggled trying to teach myself to learn how to knit. And And what did I do? I went looking for resources to help me, right? I broke that problem down into some smaller pieces and tried to work through it a little bit at a time. But sought out somebody else maybe who knew more than I did, which in that case was a nice YouTube video. Kelly, have you gotten stuck lately?
Oh, yes. I have actually a scope that I use to go bird watching, and I have a new camera, and trying to get the camera and the scope, I could easily put them together. But then getting the right settings to be able to take a picture that wasn't super overexposed has been driving me crazy. And I'm actually still in the iterating part of solving the problem, because it's better, but it's not correct yet. And so I have also sought out, I've watched a National Geographic video on photography. I have been reading the little booklet, and I am looking at I'm Googling and looking at resources online to help me. And I'm still not there, but closer.
Yeah. See, Sonya, you got stuck learning to make jewelry.
Yes. So I have been learning to make jewelry, and the metal work, where I was able to do the other designs pretty easily. The metal work and having to deal with the fire and getting it just right and setting everything to make the bezel, that was a bit of a challenge.
Oh, gotcha. And I'll tell you, that's a good feeling, isn't it? And I'll tell you, like, I sometimes find myself still getting stuck, like when I'm programming in Spike Prime or it's Scratch software. And even when I'm like dipping my toe into Python sometimes even with a software programming language I'm familiar with, sometimes I still get stuck in there and I have to really think about what's going on. And I remember when I was in the classroom, that was hard for me sometimes to think about how can I help my students when they get stuck on something to help them work through this process. So we're going to think about that a little bit and dig into this issue. And I'm going to hand it over to Kelly to talk for a minute. So,
all right. Well, let's go on to the next slide, please. So what we're going to do is a little hands-on for getting unstuck. And so what we'd like you to do is create this 4x4 grid on your paper. And then you can see that we have chosen 4 colors of brick. So if you have some Lego pieces, just some little Lego pieces, you can use those. But if you don't, you can just write the names of the colors, blue, red, yellow, and green in the squares. And the idea is it's very much like Sudoku, and we are going to have you build but put one of each color in each row, in each column, and in each quadrant. So we would need 1 red, 1 yellow, 1 blue, and 1 green in each row, going across, in each column, going up and down, in each quadrant. So the way that we would do this is that we would look, and I think you have to click the next button, the next one. Oh, not yet, I guess. Sorry. I was thinking I had the words out there. So we're going to look across row 1. And then when we look across row 1, we say, what are the 2 colors that are missing in row 1? They are red and yellow. That would be missing in that first row. Now we're going to look in column 2. And in column 2, we're only missing 1 color. So that would be yellow. And then in the quadrant, we are missing 2 colors. That would be green and yellow. And the only one that is in all 3 is the color yellow. So then we would be able to put in that column and row 1, column 2, we would put yellow. So we have created the first section of decomposing the problem, because we have all of them to fill, but we've decomposed it so that we are in fact just picking one specific location to start with. So we start there, we add yellow. Now, you can pick another location, say the row 2, column 4, and look and see which one belongs there, and then put one in there. And how would you do it? Well, we do it the same way. We'd look at what's missing in row 1, and we would say, what's missing in row 1? Green and blue and green. And then we'd look at what's missing in column 2. That would be blue. And then we would look and see what was missing in the quadrant. And then in the quadrant, it's red and blue. So the only thing that was in all 3 was blue. So now we know that. Now we could say that we have just made an algorithmic process to be able to go and find what's missing in each of those. So you could follow that very quickly. Now I'm going to show you another puzzle. And in this puzzle, what we've actually done has taken what was the 4th column completely done in our first puzzle and made it into the first column. Now, on first thought, you might say, well, that's going to work just fine. We're not going to have any troubles. But actually, because we've moved from the first column or the 4th column to the first column, that's not so much a problem. But we've also moved from the 3rd or the 2nd and 4th quadrants to the 1st and 3rd quadrant. And that creates a problem. So if I ask my students to finish this one, they're going to say, it's impossible. I can't do it because I'm always going to have, for example, if we use our skills that we just got and we look for row 4, column 3, what would go in here? Well, we'd look and we'd say, what's missing from row 4? Blue. What's missing from column 3? Blue and green. What's missing from quadrant 4? Red and yellow. Oh my goodness. I didn't have anything that matched at all. That's why it's impossible, because if we put blue in that specific location, row 4, column 3, I've already got a blue up in that quadrant. So that doesn't work. And yet it must, right? Because it's in the 4th row. That's what's missing. But clearly this is an impossible puzzle to do. So we would give them something impossible and then say, all right, how could you fix this puzzle? You put all the little pieces in. How could you fix that to make it a correct puzzle? And then take some pieces off and see if someone can, in fact, solve your puzzle. So we've shown you how to get your kids stuck, and then how they can, you're teaching them how can they use some strategies to get unstuck and create their own.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. I know we were talking about this problem about when your students get stuck. So I'm kind of curious, do your students get stuck when they're programming ever? They struggle with that? Love to.
Especially Python.
Yeah. If you're in the chat, just say yes. My students get stuck. We talk about strategies all the time when they get stuck. My students used to get stuck. And the worst feeling in the world, and I remember when I started teaching robotics and even Scratch, was What happens when I don't know as the teacher, right? When I don't know as the teacher what the answer is when my students get stuck, sometimes I panicked because I felt like I needed to be the source of all knowledge in the classroom, but I quickly learned that that was not the case, right? But it's that panic feeling, and it's kind of scary, right? So knowing some strategies yourself for like how you've gotten unstuck from lots of different maybe experiences you've had, like my knitting issue and Kelly's camera, right? Sonya and her metalworks, right? We can kind of pull from that. But sometimes, you know, it's also nice to be able to see how other teachers help their students get unstuck. I will say, as an educator, though, like embracing that vulnerability of not knowing is so important, because when you don't know, what happens is you model that authentic problem solving for kids that they hardly ever get to see us do. But I'd like to talk just a minute about what this looks like in practice. So how do other teachers help students who are stuck? Well, the platform that I was talking about earlier is a great place that we can go to check this out. And I invite you to take a minute to create an account for yourself. So if you go to pd.legoeducation.com, it will take you to a site that looks like this, pd.legoeducation.com. You'll need to create a free Lego ID account for yourself. So it's no cost to create that account. I always suggest to people to use their school email address to create that account. And it will send you an email that you will need to confirm to your school account. So sometimes that ends up like in a clutter folder or a junk folder, so you might have to hunt over there for it. But once you have created that account for yourself, you can come back to that pd.legoeducation.com site and log in. And it will give you access. You'll see lots of really great information there. And I'm wondering, as I share here, probably need to stop sharing for a moment. See if I can share with some audio. There we go. So on the platform, once you get in, there's lots of great things that you'll be able to explore, and we're going to walk you through that. But we're going to take a minute to peek inside the classroom of a teacher named Julie. And Julie is talking about how her students get stuck and some strategies that she uses to help them get unstuck. The other benefit of that she kind of goes through with helping her students get unstuck is that she talks about how it impacts the culture of her classroom, really making it a culture that's set up for student feedback and collaboration and working with one another. And so first we're going to hear from Julie. So here's Julie right up here. We're going to listen to her chat for a minute.
I use the metaphor, it's not my metaphor, but it's a metaphor that's used of the learning pit, where, you know, you fall into this pit and it's hard to climb out, and all the productive learning happens while you're engaged in this, you know, this climb to get back out. And when you get to the other side, to the top of this pit, this ravine of learning, you experience that euphoria that we all experience, you know, when we reach the crest of a hike or when we ride our bike for the first time, and that's the eureka moment of learning, when you're so excited that you've learned something new. But the bigger part for us in my classroom is that it's also part of being a community to reach back in and help everyone else to experience that exciting moment of achieving a goal or problem solving. So we will continue to use that metaphor. You know, you need to reach back in and make sure everybody gets to the top, but you also just give them enough to let them climb out themselves so they can experience the joy of learning.
So she talks about her learning pit and what that means to her. And as part of this learning quest, we can also take a peek into her classroom. So we're going to watch two of her students. And you can watch how her students interact with each other. Obviously, one's stuck and the other is trying to help their classmate get unstuck, and how Julie actually interacts with them.
Hosni's had some success. Share with Evan and Hadley.
I have this thing. I made this, and I just I'm sort of sliding it up my arm until it fits. And then I guess you guys, if you want something that comes down your arm, connect it with something else in these holes, and it could just go down your arm. I guess that makes sense.
How did you make that, Hosni? The thing that goes around your arm?
I just used these pieces, and then I sort of connected them with these. This yellow thingy. And then I was just measuring it around my arm to see how many pieces I needed so it would fit where I wanted it to. And I used a couple of pieces which have it's this thing, the thing that can go through, which looks like a cross. I used the pieces that have that. And I used a few straight pieces, and I was just connecting them with the white pieces, these things, and the blacks.
So Hadley, keep asking if you're not sure. Let Hosni, if you need her to give you more directions, just keep asking.
So, which yellow pieces do you use to make it?
One piece I connected it with a black, and one side I connected it with a black piece, and the other side I connected it with a white.
So, so you can see how, Julie did a really great job of helping facilitate that conversation, supporting her students, and knowing how to, collaborate with each other and really help one another get unstuck with this building challenge that they were working through. So thinking about, the PD piece that you just saw there, how can you see that teachers could leverage something like this professional development platform to help their own students get unstuck? Do you find that strategy is helpful? I hope so. Kelly, have you worked with some teachers, have used, some ideas that they have learned on our platform to do simple things like helping their students get unstuck when they're stuck in a...
Yes, actually, last week in Florida, I was working with some teachers, and that's exactly what they were. They were actually working through getting unstuck, and it was something that we were able to look at what's in the PD platform and say, can you find something that you might want to try? So they watched some of the unstuck, and then we had a little discussion on what they would do with students and how they were going to use that information right now, because some of them were stuck. And so I thought it was really nice how she talked about the whole community of the classroom is responsible for helping each other. So it's not a competition, and it is not cheating to ask a friend or someone you see being successful, how did you do that?
I love that, because I think that does speak back to, when we're in our computer science classrooms, or we're in a classroom in general, really, we really want to help our students develop those skills around collaboration and teamwork. And part of that is obviously helping each other, not only when we get stuck, but also with that feedback piece, and being able to ask good questions from one another to really help our own learning kind of move forward. So this little piece that we watched, Julie's classroom, was actually part of a very larger module that's on our platform that's called a Learning Quest. And the Learning Quest is actually called Facilitating Collaboration and Teamwork. So it's going to provide teachers with some strategies that they can observe other teachers use, listen to them talk a little bit, reflect maybe on the lesson that maybe you've watched or part of the lesson, or talk about something leading into a lesson. And in this case, you'll see in the yellow box over to the side, this quest talks about, how do you support students in that positive and purposeful collaboration, encouraging that collaboration through how you can structure some activities, and then creating that classroom community that that you want to create for students are helpful to each other and can really be that resource that they need when they get stuck on something. But also as a teacher, being able to recognize an obstacle that could hinder collaboration and teamwork within your classroom, and then how you can address that obstacle. So learning quests are pretty long. It's a quest. They're about 45 minutes to work through. The nice thing about the platform is if you get into a quest and then you maybe done like 10 minutes, you can leave and come back and it'll remember where you left off, and it'll say you just want to pick up where you left off. And they're anchored around 4 related teacher competencies. So those 4 bullet points or numbers in that yellow box are the 4 teacher competencies this quest is really anchored around. There's also a companion guide that you can download if you want to take notes, self-assess, reflect on your own learning as you're moving through that quest, that you can download and print off as well. It's also great for I put capturing ideas there, your thoughts around what you'd like to do. The other type of learning experiences we have is a learning burst. So maybe you don't have 45 minutes to commit to a learning experience for yourself, but you have maybe 15 minutes. So a learning burst really is anchored around one competency from our framework. This one is very related to that quest around collaboration. So this is really focused on addressing those obstacles to collaboration in the classroom. So it can give you some ideas on ways that you can help your students to be more attentive, or how to coach them to give that supportive and constructive feedback. They also have companion guides that you can download and use that to capture ideas and guide your own learning a little bit too. They're very interactive in nature. So as you work through a learning burst or a quest, there's some self-assessment pieces in there that you can think about what you've watched and respond to. So it makes the learning really fun as you work through it. I'm going to pop back over here to the platform real quick and show you where this one is. So when you log in with that user ID that you've created, you come to the home room space, and you'll notice it all leads with Lego Education Solutions. If you don't have Spike Prime, that's fine. You can actually click on Spike Prime and enter into any of these learning bursts and find some strategies that you can use for your classroom. And when it loads, you'll see the 4 categories appear for 21st century skills, pedagogy, STEAM concepts, and classroom management. So, and I just refreshed it there thinking it was going to take a little longer to load. And so you can select one of these broad categories to click in. Just clicking on STEAM concepts here. And you'll see not just learning bursts and quests, but if you do own one of a Lego Education Solutions, Spike Prime or BertQ Motion Essentials or BertQ Motion Prime, you'll see some product support videos for them. You'll also find some learning resources. So if you don't know a lot about 5E instructional model or our learning through play philosophy, you can find those resources here too. But you'll notice here's a learning burst around decomposing a computational problem. Here's a quest around facilitating computer science learning. So I can launch those. You'll notice if it's something that I've completed, I have this nice little green circle and check mark. If it's something that I'm in progress, which means I've opened it up and started, then I have a little yellow symbol there. So I know I can go back and complete that. Navigation platforms, pretty simple once you get in. You can always go back to that Spike Prime Classroom where you have your 4 categories by clicking on, I call it the breadcrumb trail up here. Click on that little icon. Clicking on Lego Education takes you to our page, but we also have this hamburger menu over here where you can kind of move back and forth as well. If you attend one of our facilitated product trainings, you actually have the opportunity to even earn micro credentials, but that's part of a paid for experience with Lego Education. But you might see somebody posting a micro credential and wonder where that came from, and that's where that comes from. So real quick here, go back to our slide deck. Hey, Kelly, you know what I heard? When you create that Lego Education account, that ID account, you can actually use it for something else.
Absolutely, for the Lego Education community. And you say, well, what is that? Well, that is how you can work well with and learn from and then support from your great ideas, people from all over the world. So they will be able to join the community, and they can look at what others have done and best practices. They can ask questions. Hey, I'm using XYZ Spike Prime, and now I have a question about what's a best practice for that. What have you found? Or I have an idea for this lesson. Has anybody ever done that before? And they can get people from all over the world to give them ideas to help them if they come up with a this isn't working the way I thought it would, or could you have code for something? They can get those ideas, and then they will find that there are a lot of ideas already on there from teachers, again, all over the world. So it's free. You can go in, you can post your own great lessons, you can look through and see what's coming up and what other people have done. And Leanna, it is amazing how creative our teachers are.
Absolutely. And sometimes, I think when you go through, our professional development platform and you've tried some strategies out, sometimes you have some of your own strategies that you've used that you would like to share with others. And this is a great place to do that. You can share those findings out with that larger Lego Education community. So just let you know that Lego ID gets you access to 2 things at no cost. You can get to our PD platform, and you can also get to our Lego Education community. So thinking about that, I thought it might be kind of nice to help us kind of craft a plan. So when you think about, crafting this learning journey for yourself, what might that look like? And so I like to think of it this way. I like to start maybe with some areas of interest to me. So I'm going to show you kind of some 4 different slides, and hopefully you can find a category of interest to you. So for example, maybe you're interested in learning some strategies for introducing computer science concepts and skills to your students. You can mark that down. That's your option C right there. And you're going to find that information in STEAM concepts. And it's a learning class, so it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's a learning class called Facilitating Computer Science. Maybe you really want to help, guide your students in asking good questions, thinking about, those questions to help identify and clarify, evaluating evidence and data and arguments and all those great things around, science, especially if you're integrating computer science within a science classroom or vice versa. That is also a learning class around facilitating science learning. So I'll give you a minute just to kind of make some observation around this. We even have developing models to generate data. Maybe you're looking to help, for your students to become those creative thinkers, strategies around that. So we have a great little learning burst around just generating multiple ideas, which really lends itself to prototyping if you do a lot of that in your classroom. I'll move on to the next slide here. So here's some more. These are all under 21st century skills. So, maybe you're looking for some ideas or strategies around helping students give constructive feedback to one another, or generating those ideas and think creatively, and then evaluating their own thinking. Maybe you have students who really need some help with being attentive listeners, and you could use some more information around maybe things that you can do in your classroom to kind of improve that. And here you'll see again, we have whether it's a learning burst or request, and the title of that learning burst or request. Give you a minute to kind of check through those. And then we have one for pedagogy. So you'll notice here that we have, it's really thinking about that pedagogical approach. Like, how do you bring play and productive experimentation in the classroom? Like, what does that look like? What are some ways that I can create an environment to support that? We have a learning burst just on that topic. Maybe you're real interested in metacognition, helping your students think a little deeper about their own thinking. We have a learning burst around that as well. Some more about feedback, because we know that's real important, especially with that formative assessment piece. Like, how can you use feedback to really help guide that learning for students in your classroom? And then that last area is all about, classroom management. So maybe you're looking for some strategies on, managing small group work, or, I have students at lots of different ability levels in my classroom, or lots of different needs. What are some things that I can do to differentiate that learning for my students? So we have some bursts and quests around that as well. And so we're kind of at time here. I know we have a little bit of time left. Wonder if anybody has any questions. I'm happy to go back into the platform and show anybody any of the resources that we have available online, or if you are stuck getting on and need a hand getting into the platform, I'm happy to help you with that little process too. But we'll open up if anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Leanna or Kelly?
I think we don't have any questions. We'll hang around here in case somebody comes in or has a question. Super glad you joined us today. Hopefully you learned about some great resources that we have available. Like I said, they're at no cost. Tell your friends. We want to make sure that lots of people know about this great resource that we have that's available for anyone that's out there. Hey, Ken.
Well, thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah, we'll wait a couple minutes. I think we'll probably have about 10 more minutes or so. Sonya?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay. I should ask Kelly what her favorite resource is on our PD platform.
Well, I really like to just start with the playful learning.
Awesome. I like that one too. One of my favorite learning bursts is around guiding students to observe closely. Sometimes that was something that I remember I struggled with, was really helping students develop those skills of observation and listening myself, and listening to the conversations that they were having while they were observing to make sure I was listening to some kind of maybe a misconception that they had around the topic. But I loved listening to how they use their own language to describe something that's going on. All right, I think we're just going to wrap up. Kelly, we'll hang on for maybe another 5 minutes or so. If somebody has a question or needs some information, I'm happy to do that.
Glad to do so. Sounds great.
I'm going to put a link. Kelly, could you grab a link to our PD platform and stick in the chat?
I sure can.
As well as to our community.
I am, but then it's not quite correct. So let's try this again.
And so, hey, Sonya, I wonder if we can put a link to our professional development platform in the event chat for everyone to be able to access.
Great. Absolutely. I will do that right now, Leanna.
Well, thanks. You might just give them a little contacts.
Yes.
It's a free platform. They'll just have to create that Lego ID to get in.
It's done.
Oh, thanks. Awesome.
That resource is available. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I hope people take advantage of those resources that we have available, and I hope they have a great rest of the afternoon at this session. At the sessions today, they look like they had some great sessions for the conference.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Yeah,
it was our pleasure to share. Thank you. Thank you, Leanna. Thank you, Kelly.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Have a great one, everyone.
Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.